welcome to Take Back Your Country. This is a series in which we address significant problems concerning the country and also the increasing control that Australians should have over their politicians. In this program, we're looking at the question of unemployment and the great problem of distinguishing between those who are unable to work because of their health or because they just cannot find a job, and those unwilling to work. Tonight we have an excellent contributor on this. He's Warwick Stacey. He's a retired soldier, born in Australia, educated in Australia, but spent many years of service with the UK Parachute Regiment and 22 SAS Regiment. And then he was with the Australian Army Reserve. And he has a wonderful plan for a way to solve the problem. And I think this time, after the government spending billions of dollars, this will work. So ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is Warwick Stacey. Welcome, Warwick, to Take Back Your Country. Thank you so much for sparing the time to talk to us.
Thank you, David, and I'm very, very pleased to be here.
So, Warwick, in your view, what's the impact of the lockdown on unemployment in Australia?
Well, David, the impact, of course, is increased unemployment. And we're told on the 23rd of July by the Treasurer that the effective rate of unemployment was now 11.3%, or 1.5 million of our fellow citizens are out of work. And by next year, it's estimated that another 750,000 will be receiving job seeker payments, and 1.25 million citizens will be receiving unemployment benefits. So that's a total of 2 million unemployed.
Warwick, you did some work in the electorate of Benelong, work for which you were not paid complete payment, but you had the opportunity there, working in an electoral office, to look at and extrapolate the unemployment figures in that electorate, which could be used as an example of an Australian electorate. What were they? What did that tell you?
Well, first of all, it was interesting that the employment figures were recorded from the census according to male and female in 5-year age groups and looking for full-time work and part-time work. And essentially, across the electorate, in the 15 to 34-year age group, there are about 1,020 people who were looking for work. And if you extrapolate that across the 150 electorates in Australia, it came to about 150,000 unemployed at that point. So it's a huge number in a young and indeed a youthful age group and age cohort.
So, Warwick, you have a very interesting proposal. I think it'll create a lot of interest when it's known. What is it?
Having served in the military and having seen the absolute benefits of service in the military for myself, and also when I was training recruits for young men who were coming in as civilians and being turned out to go to the battalions as fully trained soldiers, and seeing in many cases, a change in their lifestyle, in their approach to life. I believe that military service is an important part, can be a very important part of a young person's life. It can be a career, as it is for many people, and it can also be a start to a career. And so what I am proposing is that the unemployed, those young people who are not in training, are not studying, don't have a job, and have no prospect of work, and who are not moving away to look for work, that they be engaged in the military on a full-time basis, and they undertake the 7 or 8 months of recruit training, which from start to finish takes a civilian and turns that civilian into a fully trained soldier, ready and able to join a battalion or join a regiment, join a unit, and work effectively as a soldier in that unit. And that training, that would be only for that period of time. It's not It's not for the rest of, for a 3-year period or anything like that. It's purely that period of time, and the whole idea is to change their way of looking at life, their outlook on life, and potentially their job prospects.
Warwick, when I was a young man, which, as you can obviously see, was a very long time ago, I was required by the government to undertake military service. It was national service for a full-time period and then for 5 years in the reserve. I found it very beneficial. I put on weight where I needed weight because I was a very thin young man, which again isn't obvious now. And I thought I benefited significantly from that. Now, what's the difference between what you're proposing and the old national service? Is it just national service under a different name?
No, it isn't. First of all, national service usually is, well, certainly the last time we had national service, it was for a 2-year period. And many European armies, particularly before they phased out national service, there was a minimum of 1 year service. This is not 12-month service, and it's not national service. National service is compulsory if it's across the whole population, or if, as occurred during the Vietnam years, and I was in the very last ballot for national service during that time, then it was a ballot. But if your number came out, then you were obliged legally to join the armed forces and to serve for that 2-year period. There is no compulsion to do this at all. So if the unemployed do not want to do it, then that's fine. However, they will cease to receive the dole. There is if you like, an unwritten contract between taxpayers and people on welfare, and I believe that that contract needs to be honoured by both sides. And so, effectively, this program is to be of benefit to the individual. Remember, I said these are young people, or these are people who don't have a job. They're not in training. They're not studying. They're not moving away to look for work. And if they stay where they are under those circumstances, then they're going to remain on that cycle of welfare dependence for the rest of their lives. And so this is an opportunity for them to break that cycle, to get out of it, to get out of outside themselves, and to learn new skills, meet new people, understand different opportunities that can be introduced to them, and to benefit. So it'll be a personal benefit and also a benefit to the nation.
Yes, well, welfare dependence quite often leads to drug dependence, criminal activities, and all sorts of wasteful things. But what I wanted to know, what's your ultimate aim in this? What's your purpose?
Well, the purpose is to change the mindset and the outlet. One of the things that made me think about this was an article I saw on a young man in northern South Australia, in a small town in northern South Australia. He'd left school in year 11, so he had no real education. He wasn't doing a trade. He had no job. He lived in a small town, and he said he'd hawked his CV around the town at the local service station, the real estate agent, the news agent, and so on, and couldn't get any work. Now, looking at him, he didn't talk about any particular sport that he played. He didn't look there was a photograph of him. He didn't look particularly physically fit or engaged in any kind of thing like that. And essentially, he was prepared to sit in this small country town or northern suburb of Adelaide and not move to look for work and wait for work to come to him. And this is work to come to him as a young man with no work experience, no education, no demonstration of reliability or commitment to an employer, so effectively unemployable. And it really made me think, and I thought, why isn't he in the Army Reserve? Now, the Army Reserve is not for everybody. I understand that, whether it's full-time service or part-time service. But the Army Reserve would have given him an opportunity to make money, tax-free money. It would have given him an opportunity to engage in a different lifestyle, physical fitness, travel, such as it is within the Army Reserve, and training, and also many opportunities that come from military service. And with promotion and so on. And those are skills that are transferable into the civilian sector. And so he could have learned something. He could have broadened his horizons geographically and also with regard to work opportunities. He wasn't going to do it. He was going to sit where he was, wallow in unemployment, and wait for the perfect job to come to him. And that, of course, wasn't going to happen.
I've, of course, had the benefit of reading your proposed plan, and I'm very impressed by it. And I know that it's not just limited to military training. What else will be offered to the cadet?
Well, one of the things I should have said to you as well is that what military training does provide, of course, is discipline, self-discipline. It develops pride. It develops teamwork, working together, initiative, problem solving, smartness in dress and carriage, and all of these things are positive characteristics for a future employer. And many employers, when they see military service on a CV, recognize that here is a person who has made a commitment, who is reliable, who does turn up on time, and who has certain standards that apply in all parts of employment. Apart from the military training, I would like this. I want to see this as a positive experience and also an enjoyable experience for the people engaged in this. And to that end, it would be, for example, perhaps a degree of further education. There could be a series of lectures from people who are invited from commerce and industry and trade to explain job opportunities, career paths, training opportunities, qualifications that are required, and so on. And also what's called adventure training, which is quite a big part of military training today. And this is interesting. People pay to do these sorts of things, to go canoeing, to go rock climbing, to go free falling, to go trekking in jungle areas or across mountains and so on. Orienteering, a whole range of adventure training sports are available, and these develop self-confidence. It's a physical fitness. They're obviously engaged in physically demanding activities and so on. And so I want it to be interesting. I had, again, an experience. I was standing in line at Singleton Army Base for lunch in an all-ranks queue, and I was talking to a young soldier behind me, and he had joined the army on the gap year program. So he was taking a year off before he went to university. And the whole idea of this gap year program was to introduce young people who are going to university to the military and to arouse their interest in the military, so that when they finish their studies, they would come back and consider a career in the military, or perhaps even during their studies, they would serve in the Army Reserve. I asked him what his intentions were, and he said he wasn't going to have anything to do with the Army. The reason being that the intention of the scheme was well-meaning and so on, but the execution was abominable, because he had been, after his initial training, somebody at Singleton decided that they needed labor to dig trenches for the troops who were training, to fill the trenches in, to put up targets on the range, to patch up the targets and so on. And so he had an extremely boring and unfulfilling final period of his military training. So I want it to be interesting, I want it to be enjoyable, I want it to be engaging, and I want it to be constructive for those who are involved. And with those, if you like, the lectures that might come from people in commerce, trade, and industry, showing them where they can go after this short period of military service, where they can find careers and where they can find jobs.
For the regular recipient of any apparently silly idea coming from the United States, usually an idea to undermine the polity, undermine values, and so on, they're much more sinister than they seem to be on the surface. And one of these is a tendency to dislike the country, hate the country that you're living in, hate its institutions, its values, and so on. What will this do in relation to that good old word, patriotism?
Well, I think it can be beneficial in that area as well, because as you're aware, we have a very strong Anzac legacy, and it's a very proud tradition that we have here in Australia of citizen soldiers and their military service to the country and for the country. And so, certainly for myself, but I would hope that for everybody who has served, whether as volunteers or under the as national servicemen, which is a requirement, or even under this scheme, that having completed it, there would be a great degree of pride in what they had achieved by coming out the other end as fully trained soldiers, and by joining that fraternity, that brotherhood, sisterhood, of course, today we must say, of trained soldiers, of Anzacs. And the tradition, it's been through, I remember in the 70s, there were people who wanted to ban Anzac Day, and then it was resurrected to a certain extent by Bob Hawke. And of course, today it's become almost the religion of Australia. And I think that under those circumstances, it can indeed engender pride, patriotism, and respect for our country.
Warwick, you're not proposing a return then to national service. But whenever people do propose a return to national service, sometimes because they're so irritated by something that's happened among the young in Australia, whenever that is raised as a serious suggestion, both the politicians and quite often high people in the military say, we just can't afford in this country where we have such a minimal defence force, we just can't afford the manpower and woman power to actually be the nannies to what are people who are in many ways unwilling to work. What's your answer to that?
To be an unlimited pot of gold to be thrown at the electorate, at the workforce, and so on. And secondly, I'm not that I'm advocating spending even more money or indeed wasting more money from the hardworking taxpayer. But we've seen, even before the Wuhan virus broke, many job creation policies and so on, which have failed. So it's just been billions of dollars that have just gone out the door, gone out the window, that have been wasted. I think the catch cry is that certainly many of these projects have been badly planned, poorly executed, and they haven't been properly managed. And this is something that there is experience in training soldiers. So it occurred in 1939. We had a very, very small regular force, and when the battalions were raised to go to fight in the Second World War, they were trained by part-time militia officers and senior NCOs and a very small number of personnel from the regular forces. So this could be done by existing Army Reserve or Reserve Forces officers and senior NCOs. Probably many of those would find themselves unemployed as a result of the Wuhan virus, and they would be grateful for the opportunity to do more military service in this way. And so I don't see a requirement for a great number of the regular forces to be involved. And in fact, the way I would like to see this done is by Army Reserve senior officers to put the plan together and to implement it. I personally know a lieutenant colonel, Army Reserve lieutenant colonel, a very clever man, very experienced in training and also very academic, and he would be able to put together a marvelous plan. It can be budgeted and it can be executed. And the point is that so much is being spent now. And certainly the money that is being paid to the unemployed, and certainly the unemployed before this virus struck, there was no return on that investment, no return at all. With this investment, there is a potential return, perhaps not for 100% of those involved, but certainly I would hope for a great majority. And so under those circumstances, unless there is a better way of doing this, a less expensive way of doing this, of changing people's mindsets, changing people's priorities, and getting people off the couch and out into the world and engaged with the world and looking for opportunities, using their initiative instead of waiting for work to come to them in whatever small corner of Australia they prefer to sit.
A friend of mine, Warwick, when he was younger, decided he would earn some more money, and he engaged in one of those programs, very expensive programs that the government set up. And he was lecturing and teaching the unemployed with a view to preparing them for finding a job. And he told me that the students he had fell into two classes. First, the elderly, usually in some form of manual work, who found that their jobs had been transferred by a very happy government to China. You know how they got rid of manufacturing. It seemed to be a policy to get all the manufacturing out of Australia. He was an old man, and well, they were older men, and my friend said that they were ones who seemed to be interested in trying to find something which would prepare them for work. Problem is, of course, it's very hard for older people to get a job because there's a prejudice against them. He said that the great majority of the people that he was working with were only there because they had to be there, and he was sure that none of them would, very few of them, would seriously go and get jobs. Yours is different from this, is it not, in that it's a whole of life experience? Would I be right in that?
Well, yes, it is, and by its very nature, it can be life-changing in a positive way and to the benefit of the person. As I said earlier, I do understand that military service is not for everybody, but and this is not compulsory, other than the point being that if it's not undertaken, then I don't feel an obligation that I should be paying, and I and every other taxpayer should be funding their unemployment benefits. When the whole purpose of this is for their benefit and to give them an opportunity to move forward. So look, I think there are many people under those circumstances, and of course, to a certain extent, they've been conditioned to that. As we said earlier, the government hasn't provided any compulsion or on its part. We're compelled to go to school when we're small. I didn't want to go to school when I was a small boy. I would have preferred to have played football. We're compelled to do different things in life, and I don't see any problem with this, with there being a compulsion to a certain degree, insofar as if you want to continue receiving your unemployment benefits, then you need to step up and you need to meet your side of the bargain as an unemployed person receiving unemployment benefits from taxpayers. So the whole idea is to change their outlook. It's to change their approach. It's to give them initiative. And I think you see it today that in the 1930s, the Depression, unemployed young men humped their swag and they walked from one end of the country to another, knocking on doors at night, offering to chop wood for a meal, looking for work. And whatever money they made, they would send home to their families. So they showed a resilience, they showed initiative, they showed a willingness to get outside their comfort zone and to go and find work. That doesn't exist today. And this is, if you like, it's a pale imitation of that humping your swag and going to look for work. The young man in northern Adelaide who was going to sit in that small rust bucket town, or whatever it was, the rust bucket suburb, he was going to wait for the perfect job to come to him, which of course was not going to happen. And he wasn't eligible for that perfect job because he had no training. He'd shown no commitment, no reliability, no initiative, no get up and go. So that's the purpose. It's to change that mindset, to get them out of their comfort zone, out into the world, to see what opportunities there are, to broaden their horizons geographically and in terms of the people they meet, the influences on them, and so on. And it can only be positive, only positive.
Warwick, talking about being told what to do, at the present time there are people in this country, in Victoria, who have been told to observe a curfew and stay at home and not do all sorts of things. And when it happened in this state, we were told that we couldn't go to restaurants and we had to stay home and we couldn't sit in parks and so on. At the present time, we're being told we can't travel overseas, even if we provide some evidence that we're not sick. And they're saying that this is going to go on until sometime next year. So being told what to do is not at all unusual in our society. Before we conclude, Warwick, I think it's a great plan. Really, I'm very impressed by it, and I see no disadvantages in it. I see it vastly superior to all those silly programs that governments rolled out time and time again. They obviously went to expensive consultants outside and devised these plans. They all cost billions of dollars, and they had no effect whatsoever in sorting out the difference between those who are unable to work and those who are unwilling to work. And that's the important thing. And it's in their interest too, not to be sitting at home and getting up to mischief, getting into drugs and crime and so on. It's very good for them too. So I think it's a wonderful program. Before we conclude, can you just summarize the benefits?
Look, there are benefits to the individual and there are benefits to Australia. So in terms of the individual, it's an introduction to the armed forces as a potential short-term or even as a career. I mean, there are many young people who join the armed forces for just a 3-year engagement and they end up staying for a lifetime career. It's an end to that welfare dependency cycle, at least for the short time that they are involved in training. It's a positive lifestyle change for them, off the couch, out into the world, into a different location, meeting different people, having different experiences. They're going to develop skills, individual skills and team skills. And then there's also an potential introduction to a range of trades and careers. One of the points that I can consider is of great interest. We have a shortage of tradesmen in Australia. We have a shortage of vocational people with vocations, and so those who enjoyed the training and who make a commitment, I don't see why the Australian Armed Forces shouldn't be involved in trade training, in vocational training. That would obviously require a commitment on the part of the individual to join the regular forces and also serve for a particular period of time in order to pay back for the training. But it's a way out, it's a way through that training as well. So that those opportunities would be there. Leadership training. Then finally, also physical fitness and a healthy lifestyle, adventure training, and work experience. Being in the military is work. It is work. And so many of these young people, certainly those that have just left school, have no work experience, so they will get that. For Australia, the benefits, it's a positive return on unemployment and the related benefits. There's a voluntary, perhaps increased manning. When I was serving in the Army Reserve up until a few years ago, there was a shortage of manpower across the regular forces and the reserve forces. If 5% of the people over a period of time engaged in this program decided that they liked the Army as a potential career in the regular forces, 2.5% in the regular forces and 2.5% decided to commit to the Army Reserve, the shortage in both arms of the service, regular and reserve, would be taken care of. Personal lifestyle changes that can benefit each trainee's community, mentally and physically healthier citizens, work-ready citizens, and then we have welfare for those who need it, not for those who want it.
On and this program and explaining this proposal, and thank you also for that proposal, which I think, if adopted, would be of tremendous advantage for the country. And I'd also like to thank Dave Fellow of Good Source News for producing this for us. That is very good of him, and I think it's a wonderful platform, which I'll be mentioning in some of my writings. And for those of you who wonder about the theme of this series, Australians Take Back Your Country, this is a proposal that Australians themselves should be taking a greater role in the running of this country. The politicians, I've previously said, are the authors of many of our significant problems. The politicians need to be accountable. They need to be accountable, as most people in life are, 24/7. And there is, if anybody wants to read a little bit more about this, there is a petition about this in my name on change.org. Just Google that, change.org, and my name. Ignore the petitions on there to silence me or have me dismissed from some position I don't hold. And have a look at that, because we believe that we have a solution which would make the politicians more accountable to the people of Australia and give Australians greater control in this country, which has such potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I agree wholeheartedly, and I look forward to your plans being implemented in the future for the sake of Australia and Australians.